It wants you to claim this relief now, and millions of people residing in several states are missing out on another payment from the federal government. If you are a part-time worker or a senior citizen, you'll likely qualify for one of these checks. Nearly 1.5 million Americans that could be owed a share of the unclaimed tax refunds are going to get the stimulus cash, because according to the IRS, the outstanding funds are worth almost $1.5 billion, with an average payout of $900. Typically, there is a 3-year deadline to claim refunds before the cash becomes property of the U.S. Treasury. But because of the crisis, there has been an extension for the tax returns. It means taxpayers have until July 17 to claim the money back. And according to the IRS, Texas residents are owed the most, with an estimated 135,000 residents in the state sitting on an average of $924. It's totaling over $141 million. The state-by-state breakdown calculated by the agency shows that California residents have the second highest sum of possible refunds, with $141 million potentially owed to 145,000 people. Florida comes in third, with a median projected refund of $893 for about 90,000 residents. And the IRS predicts that about 81,000 New Yorkers could be owed almost $87 million, while people living in Illinois could be sitting on about $57 million in unclaimed cash. The state with the lowest sum of unclaimed tax refunds is Vermont, where 3,100 people could be eligible for just over $3 million in refunds. The average amount of money that could be owed is slightly over the national median at $901, because according to the agency, students, part-time workers, and seniors often overlook filing a tax return and they never realize they're owed a refund check. Experts are warning that Americans should start gathering their records and file the return as soon as possible to avoid missing out on a potential windfall. And low to middle income people might also realize that they stand to lose out on more than just a refund. Because the IRS warns that workers may be eligible for the so-called Earned Income Tax Credit, which provides a tax break even without a balance due. The Earned Income Tax Credit is putting an average of $2,000 back at recipients' banks and helping lift more than people out of poverty. 31 million people applied and received this credit last year, but if the taxpayers who are eligible for the credit still don't claim it. Tax credits can help reduce how much you owe or how much you can give a refund for. There are a few basic qualifications for the Earned Income Tax Credit, including being a U.S. citizen, having earned income from wages, and also in the Senate, Democrats are warning the president not to agree to anything that would hurt the low-income Americans or to undermine the battle against climate change. Democratic senators are increasingly concerned that any deal that Biden strikes with Kevin McCarthy will include some major concessions that make it easier to approve fossil fuel extraction projects. It has spurred some of them to use the president to raise debt limit unilaterally and circumvent Republican lawmakers altogether. Democrats had urged Biden for months not to negotiate with McCarthy over a bill to raise debt limit. The president followed that advice for months, but he changed his course this week. And now there are several Democrats that have said that they will not vote for any legislation that will go against the promises they made to the American people. More relief bills need to be passed in Congress. Chuck Schumer has also confirmed that he's been having private conversations with 2 holdout Democratic senators on making big changes to the filibuster. We have a ton of good news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, and SSI and SSDI. Now if you guys want to know the latest news about the fourth stimulus check, then continue watching this video. Biden is taking huge action this week to fight inflation, and the Biden administration has confirmed that addressing inflation,
including 14,000 trucks. It's critical. It's critical to our economy, and it's critical to our quality of life. We're going to continue to do everything we can within our power to get this back open as quickly and easily as possible. We're not leaving until it's done, and we're going to get this done, God willing, in record time. I'm looking forward to hearing more from the folks on the ground in a moment, but now I'm going to turn it over to the governor, who is doing one hell of a job.
And helping low-income households financially are their top priorities. Several new relief programs are being established this month. Confronted with a sharp decline in approval ratings and the relentless increase in consumer prices, President Biden is finally shifting to full inflation fighting mode with a month-long campaign intent to contain public outrage over the rising cost of everyday goods. The White House is taking steps to calm voters and their worries about surging inflation. They are signaling that Biden understands what U.S. households are enduring and that officials are maximizing efforts to bring prices under control. This comes ahead of the midterm elections. Just last week, Biden held a rare Oval Office meeting with Jerome Powell, central bank officials, hiked interest rates again on May 4th, lifting them by 50 basis points for the first time in 2 decades. Jerome Powell has said inflation is much too high, and the Fed has also announced plans to begin running down its massive $9 trillion balance sheet. The inflation report in April showed that prices cooled off a bit, but remained near a 40-year high. Core prices, which exclude gas and food, also accelerated more than expected, underscoring how strong inflationary pressures in the economy still are. With Biden's approval rating sinking to its low, the Biden administration finally has a brand new plan to fight inflation and help the American people. Millions of Americans may get extra $225 stimulus checks under this new stimulus proposal. Millions of people could get millions of Americans could also get additional cash payments of $225 under a new proposal. That comes as red-hot inflation continues, and qualifying residents in Indiana may soon see the relief. Indiana's Republican governor is also proposing a plan to send $225 payments to people in the state amid the highest inflation since 1981 by tapping into the state's growing budget surplus. The governor said he will call for a special legislative session before the end of June, so lawmakers can consider and potentially act on a plan that will total $1 billion in budget surpluses. He said Indiana residents have real needs right now during this period of high inflation, from the gas pump to buying groceries, and everyone should benefit from the state's success. The $225 check comes after about 4.3 million of the state's taxpayers began receiving $125 payments last month under the same law. According to the governor's office, if it's approved, each Indiana resident who has filed 2021 taxes would be eligible to now receive a combined total of about $350 in payments. Married couples filing jointly would also receive about $700. The additional deposit will be made to the bank accounts of eligible residents in Indiana who have filed their tax returns. And that's the good news I want to hear from everybody. Now, skyrocketing gas prices is definitely a huge problem for the White House, and while the administration began the month by pivoting heavily toward its economic message, experts say the attempt has so far fallen flat, especially as the national average for a gallon of gas hits a record of $5. Along with inflation that presents a major political challenge for Biden Democrats, the White House is showing signs that it is seriously considering a federal gas tax holiday. President Biden's economic team has discussed the gas tax holiday recently, and is expected to meet later this week for further talks. The White House is under political pressure to do something to provide relief to Americans dealing with high inflation and rising gas prices. The economic storm has seriously created headwinds for Democrats ahead of the midterms. One Democrat told The Hill it's definitely an option on the table, and suspending the federal gas tax would require an act of Congress, but a public push by Biden in favor of the policy could help spur action on Capitol Hill. Some are considering the White House on the idea. A handful of states have already moved to suspend their gas tax, and the White House has already repeatedly said that nothing is off the table when it comes to combating rising gas prices. And asked at a briefing Monday afternoon whether the administration was considering a federal gas tax holiday, the White House press secretary said that she had nothing new to announce on addressing gas prices. But a few others in Washington say that a federal gas tax holiday would have little impact for consumers. An estimate from the Penn-Wharton budget model released early this year found that suspending the federal gas tax from March to December of this year would reduce the average gas